What was your worst experience from dating apps? You/Rambo7112 responded. I had a great first date with a girl from Tinder. She was super happy to set up a second date for later that week, and was sending me memes and chatting until the night before. The day of, she decides to stand me up in below freezing weather without warning. I was texting her asking where she was, and I could see her come online just to ignore me. Besides that, probably the multiple matches who would agree to a date, cancel the day before, pretend to be interested in rescheduling the date, and then drag out the process for weeks until I gave up and unmatched. Interested people will make time for you. 99.9% of the time, no one is. Busy 4 weeks on end. You/Nomaxalode responded. I am widowed and dating again. It's difficult to use a dating app as I came from a time before when I did very well and there were no apps. I met a woman and we decided to meet in Starbucks in Barnes & Noble's bookstore, which is attached to a mall. The conversation is going well. We walk into the mall, and she bumps into her ex. They start arguing and then hitting each other until they are fist fighting. There is a crowd now and security comes. I duck into the crowd and make a beeline to my car. She texts me later to apologize but comments why I didn't step in for her defense. I just said not interested and I block her response. You/Bill_Wilson responded. I met this girl on Bumble who seemed really sweet and we clicked super well at first. She told me that she was stuck in a lease with her ex, who she broke up with a couple months before, but she was trying to move back in with her mother. I wasn't thrilled but I was thinking, whatever, it's not her fault. A week later I had lost my virginity to her and a couple days after that I got a text from her telling me that she had a wonderful time with me but that she realized she was still in love with her ex. Apparently I made her feel like her old self, and that included being in love with a man who started dating her when she was 17 and he was 26. Stupidly, I gave her a chance to make up her mind and she said she would pick me even though her brain told her not to. However, the final straw was that she insisted on staying friends with him and that I was controlling for not wanting to date her if she would do that. You/SectorSpark responded. So Elle started dating a girl a few years younger than me. Everything was fine, we seemed to have a lot in common. One day she called me crying telling me that her dad died. It was really unfortunate and I tried to help her process this as best as I could. Sometime later I got a call from my grandma telling me her younger brother died, asking if I want to attend the funeral. It was a bit surprising as they had a really bad fight about inheritance like 30 years ago and as far as I know never interacted ever since. I actually didn't make anything out of it at first, only that it's an unfortunate row of tragedies. Well, you can already guess who I saw at the funeral. It was extremely awkward but now I know that apparently I have an aunt who's younger than me lol. You/Mobkin444 responded. As always, it started with good banter via the app. I made a small penis joke which made her weirdly excited. Over dinner she tells me it's because she has a medically too tight vagina that could only accommodate a small dick which sadly I lack. Date was over, I offered to drop her off at her place. Turns out she lived with her mom, not an indictment, but was not prepared to meet mom on the first date. But I do and I'm feeling super uncomfortable so I say my goodbyes but just as Elle leaves she starts feeling horribly nauseous. Turns out she's super lactose intolerant and was reacting to the cheese-based appetizer that she ordered. She also had an extreme fear of vomit so she started having a panic attack. I offered to drive her to the pharmacy and I'm telling you she had zero clue what to look for, didn't know what the word antacid meant or what tumps were, so I had to buy everything. I drop her off the second time and wait for the tumps to kick in before I got up to leave. I'm at the door and she looks at me with genuine confusion and says, but wait, you don't want to stay over? I was gonna suck your dick. I said, it's 3:30 good night. Next morning I wake up to a million texts asking me if I liked her and why I was ignoring her. The whole experience made me realize how desperate I had been and how the apps played into that. You/Hangrinerc responded. Late to the party but matched with a guy on Tinder who was typically my type but out of my league. I felt really special that he seemed to like me. After hooking up a couple of times we got more serious. He was sober from all substances for over 2 years. I really admired this as my mom is an alcoholic. His family was lovely. He was so kind. 6 months in I woke up to loud banging on my doors. 3 cops asking if LVE seen said guy. I was confused and said no. One of them said she's not the girl in the photo. They then showed me a photo of him and a girl in MY Jeep which I now noticed was not in my driveway. They used it to rob a jewelry store. He was caught hours later hiding in some bushes nearby. He went to a local jail awaiting sentencing. I visited him once, wanting an explanation more than anything. He told me he had been using meth and heroin for the last few months. It's not you, I'm an addict and I'll do anything to get more drugs when I'm using. I had never been around someone who used hard drugs, only alcohol or typical party drugs. I didn't know the signs to look out for. I was so content with his answer and wished him luck. I'm still in touch with his sweet mom. He's in prison in another state, never stopped using or stealing things. It's been almost 10 years. You/Ian_Annie responded. Oh man. I have a few. I drove 2 hours to a date to get stood up by a salmon fisherman. A firefighter with a big Darth Vader tattoo, who was the spitting image of Jeffrey Dahmer, told me he couldn't get off in the bedroom unless I let him drag me around the house by my hair. A heavily bearded Jewish surfer met me for coffee and called me fat. I am not. A redhead Russian man who continually referenced the Ukrainian uprising in disgust and carried a vintage six-shooter as his EDC nearly set his bedroom on fire with a candle while we watched Airplane and shotgunned vodka. An alcoholic with a big hole right in the middle of his kitchen floor told me my Spanish was terrible. Granted, my Spanish sucks. I was stood up by a shredded engineer and had a short romp with a pile driver who insisted his cows were too smart to eat the poisonous plants that grew all over their field. There was a bodybuilder who told me that guns couldn't stop him from doing anything he wanted, that he was simply too strong to be affected by bullets. Then, icing on the cake, I got ghosted by a train conductor with a nose ring whom I had dated for 2 entire months. That joke writes itself somehow. That was a new low for me. You/affectionate_bat_632 responded. Ooh, I was catfished. He took photos from strategic angles and lighting that implied he was taller and more muscular and lied about his height, several inches. He ended up being a totally thin dude that weighed maybe 90 pounds and shorter than me. I think he was 5 feet 3 inches that didn't even live in the country. Yup, he was just visiting and he never mentioned it until the date even though we talked for about 2 weeks. Also horrible driver, didn't speak much English, he was using Google to text and translate. I made do with Spanish since he mainly spoke Portuguese, but even then he was horrible at making conversation. It was absolute silence unless I asked something. Also, we get to the restaurant, he invited me for dinner and drinks, and said he wasn't hungry and didn't want to drink. So I say fuck that I'm eating cause I'm starving and I am inhaling my food so we can leave, but as I am just about done he says he's now hungry and would like a drink. Took about 4 trips of the server coming back and answering questions for him to just get the same drink and entree I ordered. At the end of the meal he said he forgot his wallet, then asked me if I wanted to get dessert afterwards and have a second date. Like excuse me? You/Hazer616 responded. So many. I had a dating app phase after my last long-term relationship. I remember meeting a girl I met on an app that looked nothing like her profile pic. I mean it was her but she looked so much better online, totally my type. In reality she was a little, fat girl with green-brown teeth. No body shaming, but what do people expect when they use pics that don't align with reality? Another time I met this gorgeous girl. She wasn't exactly local so she told me she would drive here and stay at my house. I was a little surprised but I offered her to crash on the couch and didn't think much of it. We had a nice evening. She went to the bathroom, came back and told me with tears in her eyes she will drive home now. Never heard anything from her again. Another time I met a beautiful Latina on Tinder while I was on a road trip with my sister in California. We are from Germany, and we met at our Airbnb. We sat in her car for hours and talked, and in the early morning she said she wished I had done something. So I kissed her and we hooked up. Then she left. That was 4 years ago and we still talk sometimes. Then there was this chick that totally vibed with me. But her friends we met later didn't and talked her down, so she wanted me to leave BC. They wanted to go to a party and I wouldn't fit in D. You/Angel412 responded. Matched with a beautiful girl when normally I matched with girls who never showed their bodies in pics, so I was immediately thinking catfish. After talking for a few hours she mentions recognizing me and later realized we graduated together and grew up less than a mile down the road. She totally knew it was me when we matched. Anyways, I looked her up in the yearbook and remembered who she was. I kept thinking, was I ever mean to her? Is this a trap? Because she was absolutely gorgeous now. Well, after a couple dates we really hit it off. Hung out every day for a month, literally fell in love and went so far as to getting a marriage license in just over a month. 10 days later she broke it off. Talk about an absolute mind fuck. I've spent more days hurting because of it than we were together. You/Airplane responded. Went on a date with a girl for the first time after working for a couple years to get out of active addiction and homelessness. Eventually, I got to a pretty financially secure place in those few years. I don't talk about money or anything but dress nice, clothes from a secondhand store, and bought a truck I took a lot of pride in, nothing crazy, a Tacoma. On our second date, we were talking about career paths, she was a teacher, and our long-term goals. About 1 minute into that conversation she just flat out says, you know, you only got to the place you're at now because of your white privilege, right? It totally caught me off guard. I liked her up until that point. Like yeah, definitely. I just stopped being homeless, quit heroin, and got promotions after cleaning up rats and bugs because I'm white, was a pest control tech. I just politely cut the night short, went home, and never talked to her again. But that didn't stop her from blowing my phone up telling me how rude I was for not responding. You/_brooder_ responded. I had a girl lock me in her flat. Tinder. Met her and we had dinner, then went to hers and sealed the deal. Same for 3 more occasions. Then one Thursday night she messaged asking if she could call me. I rang her and she burst into tears. I agreed to go over and make sure she was okay. I let her talk and gave her a cuddle and tried to calm her down. She'd lost her job and was worried she'd lose her flat. At about 11 p.m. on a work night, I hadn't managed to calm her but I had work and I told her I had to go. Long story short, she ran to the door, locked it, and stuck the keys down her pants and started screaming at me, please stay, you have to stay. If you stay you can FCK me, if you stay you can FCK me. It took me another 2 hours to calm her to a level she unlocked the door and let me go. I couldn't mentally force my way out that door for fear she'd claim I assaulted her or something. I honestly thought I was going to have a panic attack. I called my dad on the way home and had a good cry from the stress. U/Zigadek responded. Ooh boy. One was real heavy, heavier than implied. Knew right away when she got out of her car and I saw the suspenders rise that hole up. One was some real classy lady, worked at a bank, thought no way we matched. Then she wanted me to pee in her mouth. I left. One started sending me videos of her completely destroying some other dude's dick, and fair enough and all, but then I could hear kids crying and yelling in the video and was like what the fuck, you just going at in front of the kids? Fucked off, that shit was heinous. One had been severely abused, to the point where she only talked about real dark and negative shit so kinda heavy to be around. Out walking and suddenly she goes, oh this is where my friend got killed with a shotgun. She also baited a guy to fight me at a bar later and that was not really cool. Guy was built like a brick shithouse, thought Jesus Christ if this pops off. Had some weird one-night stands and a few returning customers. In happy relationship now. U/Butchslap responded. I matched a really nice girl, we decided to go on a date. Restaurant, walk in the local park, then headed to her place. She seemed cute but a little esoterical, stopping to touch multiple trees that were emitting energy or something, insisted on taking a detour to the cemetery. But overall no serial killer vibes. Throughout the date she kept getting calls but never picked up her phone, making up some obvious fake story about it. We got along really well though, so I didn't think too much of it. When we got to her place she eventually picked up her phone. The mood changed immediately. She turned a little clandestine towards me and went on to give the person on the phone a physical description of me. After some really weird moments, she finally revealed to me that she is still kinda in a relationship while looking for people for a man-on-man on-woman threesome. Then it dawned upon me that the whole thing felt kinda scripted and I probably wasn't the first guy she did this to. Needless to say, I went through with it but it was the weirdest sexy time ever. U/Dizzle1 responded. Part of me felt really bad for this person too. We matched on Occupid, everything was going well. We decided to meet for lunch where she gave me 2 warnings. 1, I am ridiculously tall. 2, I'm very awkward. That's totally fine, right? I don't care if someone is taller than me, and who isn't awkward. Everything was going well until the food came. She chewed with her mouth open, lip smacking and all, it was like she was trying to gross me out. I honestly thought she was looking for a way out, because halfway through the date she ran to the bathroom for 20 minutes and when she came out she said she had to go because she was having indigestion problems. Okay cool, I'm fine with that. Then she asked for a second date and explained everything away as being socially awkward and stressed and she had a wonderful time. Okay, second date. It was otherwise an okay date, maybe after her nerves calm it'll be fine. Let me ask you guys a question. Who here chews ice cream with their mouth open? And if so, why? It was getting all over the place. I thought she was trolling me. Who eats food like that on a date? I told her it wasn't going to work out. That's what dating is for, right? Then she messaged me that her therapist hates me and thinks I'm an asshole. How do you respond to that? Accept okay and then block. Compared to the other stories here this one seems really petty, but please don't chew with your mouth open. U/Scrapbookie responded. I met a guy and we went downtown to lunch and then figured we'd walk around. I spent the entire time trying to get him to talk about anything other than Star Wars. He would either not talk at all, or anything I asked he would relate back to Star Wars. He never asked me a single question the entire time and it was really awkward because I was constantly trying to keep the conversation going. Before I am even home from the lunch date, I had 8 or so texts about how he really felt a connection and can't wait to see me again and how amazing I was, etc. I waited a bit and just let him know I didn't feel a romantic connection. He seemed upset, but after a few texts we didn't talk. I look at Facebook a week or so later, and I see a message request. This guy found me on Facebook to write me a letter. It was pages and pages about how I was his soulmate and we were meant to be and I was running from the best thing that ever happened to me because I was scared. I never replied, just blocked him and moved on. Not the worst thing in this thread, but so cringe and creepy. U/secondhand_bra responded. It's pretty depressing. I went on a date with this girl who showed up 40 minutes, got drunk AF, revealed that she is a functioning alcoholic, smokes like 20 cigs a day and is jobless. Another date I went, that girl mistakenly revealed that she likes her male best friend and wouldn't leave him for anything. Then another date which itself was pretty good, but that girl while chatting said she is looking for a relationship, which I was too, then said during the date that she is just looking for friends. Maybe the fault was in me, but she wouldn't give me a straight answer. You will talk to someone for a few days with your whole heart and they will ghost you at the very end. I have seen this happening less when you meet someone IRL for the first time. In the beginning, whenever someone would ghost me, would make me think I am ugly, boring, shitty, and whatnot. Then I realized it's just a numbers game. The more people you match with, the more chances of you meeting someone good. May not work in less populated areas. U/MagicSPA responded. After months of build-up, chat, flirting, and phone calls, I went to visit her in her town about 50 miles away from mine, and it was one of the most lackluster dates LVE ever had. When we were talking remotely via the app, on email, or over the phone, the conversation flowed like wine, the seductive flirting was red hot, and the feeling of connection was enormous. But the date itself consisted of her spending several hours seeming to make almost no effort, with conversational gambits failing and with topics spiraling into dead ends. Hell, I found it hard even to get eye contact out of her. It was like I was dealing with a completely different person from the one who had been doing all the writing and talking. So after months of build-up, there was absolutely no sense of connection when we finally met in person, and within days we had stopped speaking altogether. You/Hackbratton responded. Had a few strange dates, but one sticked the most. I was meeting a girl from somewhere in Indochina which moved fresh in my hometown. I invited her to show her a few cool spots and old parts of the city. I shouldn't have done it. This girl was scared of too many people, and also when there aren't enough people in sight, maybe she thought I was a predator. She complained about everything and anything, total disrespect towards me. Every question about her I ask gets answered in maybe a half sentence. If she wasn't complaining, she was constantly talking about the serpentine beauty OPS in my country, which seemed like it was the only reason she picked this country in the first place. At this point I could give less f***ks about her and just wanted to get her safe back to where we started and get home. But as mentioned, too many people or not enough people equals no walkie. After half an hour I had enough and started to roll a joint in front of her and start to smoke it. Her face was priceless. But guess what? The moment I lit up my J, she was very able to walk like a normal person. Dodged a bullet. You/deleted responded. There was a girl I talked to for weeks on MySpace, a friend of a friend. We had a date and I planned a crazy nice night with stuff to do in Vegas. I checked with her before if she'd like to do stuff on the strip. She says yes. I was looking forward to dinner because LD rushed after work to drive far to get her. She hops in the car and asks what we're doing, and I asked if she would like it to be a surprise. She begins to talk in her Aubrey Plaza-like tone that she hates surprises. Fair. I say I wanted to go ride a roller coaster. She says she hates heights. Okay, fair again, so I say I planned a night at the aquarium. She says she hates water. That's kind of fair, I guess, so I bring up dinner spots. I had planned dinner at the aquarium, and this person says they're not hungry. On the dinner date she knew I planned, for which I was starving. I say, well, let's go to the strip and be spontaneous. What does she say? You can't plan to be spontaneous. I said, well, we gotta plan something. I drove us there, we walked around in near silence after my failed attempts to talk about literally anything, then I drove her home on the drive that took forever, it really was far, and slammed down a quarter-pounder the first chance I had. That cheeseburger tasted so good, I can still remember it. You/Usogiojimbo responded. I can't decide between these, so to use both of my worst experiences on dating apps. The first was I met someone who I was extremely attracted to, was pretty much everything I was looking for, and when we met we hit it off immediately. We were both on the same page with everything. I thought I hit the jackpot. They then let me know that they were actually married, not splitting up, not getting divorced, happily married, and I was intended to just be a side thing for fun. The second was when I went on a date with somebody who had been sexually assaulted previously, and she didn't tell me until the date started that she expected me to follow a list of rules to make her feel comfortable and safe that made me feel extremely uncomfortable. I was to not get within 6 feet of her. I was to avoid any sudden movements. I was to stay within sight. At one point, she tripped and fell coming off of a curb, and when I reached to help her up she flipped the fuck out because I was violating a rule. You/SpaceGbus responded. I've had many occurrences. I incorporated FaceTime dates before anything in person into my bio now. Recently, I matched with a girl and almost immediately she threw me her phone number. Looking back, that was pretty odd. We FaceTimed and she began to tell me how she was going to PA school, but she also writes music and plays an acoustic guitar. I didn't want to make the conversation all about career stuff, so I asked about her music. One thing led to another and she went on to tell me that she's recently become single. Which is fine, I understand the hustle to get back out there. Although, she told me the past 2 months she's been writing songs about all the men she's been with since. Here I thought it'd be a song or two. She showed me a whole 20-song album. Each song about someone else and how they left her or broke her heart. She called that her inspiration, just like her idol, who was, you guessed it, Taylor fucking Swift. I didn't want to become the next casualty of a Swiftie, so I politely ended the FaceTime. You/*Sky_plays responded. Definitely not the weirdest story on here, but still makes me feel uneasy to this day. Had nothing special going on Halloween night. Decided to open Tinder and start conversations with the girls I had recently matched with. One of the girls seemed a lot more enthusiastic than the other ones, which was a bit off-putting, but I was digging it. We get on a voice call and I ask her why she isn't doing anything that night for Halloween. She says she had no parties or anything to do for the night, so I jokingly said we should hang out. She agreed. I get to her house and she's extremely touchy and clearly just wants sex. So naturally one thing leads to another and we're sleeping together. We finish and we're watching a movie when she gets a phone call. She leaves the room for a couple minutes. She comes back and just sits at the edge of her bed crying. I ask her if she's good and she says in the smallest voice, "I'm sorry, I have a boyfriend, you have to go." I was out of that house within the minute. Ain't no way I was getting caught in that house bout to get my ass beat. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Leave your own stories down below, I would love to read them. If you would like to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe, it helps me out greatly.